average cost.
Average total cost?
Nope, average cost. Yes, average total cost. Sorry.
Total cost divided by the quantity.
Okay, so we take the total cost of production and we divide by quantity, what we've been doing the whole time. And how could that possibly be misleading for a decision maker if they confuse marginal cost and average cost? So one way to think about this might be to look at our graph that we did. Why could that possibly be confusing if they confuse marginal cost and average cost?
Price would be
Let me hold price just constant, whatever it is.
the quantity. I mean, change how much quantity you make.
Okay, so if we're going to make an extra, let me just say an extra unit, I guess, since we were kind of focusing on that. Where could that get dangerous in terms of decision making if we had an extra unit of production? I'm not telling you where the unit is along the scale is my hint. So if we're making an extra unit of production, where could you be misled into thinking that's a good idea, that I should make an extra unit? Where along the scale might that cause you to be a problem? Because if you're focusing in on the average cost, which is, by the way, typically what managers do. If you guys have worked at places, they'll focus in on the average cost per unit. Well, what's the average cost of that steak or that hamburger or that beer or whatever? They might start to get hung up on the average cost. When can that be detrimental?
When the average cost is over the marginal.
Okay, so average cost over the marginal cost here at this unit. So how would that possibly be bad? How could we tell a bad story of making a bad decision? So what's our decision-making criteria again?
It's going to hurt further along down the line.
Down the line?
If you're, let's just say, we go back to the burger example.
Okay.
$7, you know, the average price per burger. If you're going off of the total cost curve, you're gonna think you're making more money.
Good, good. That now you got it nailed down, right? So if the manager's focusing in on the average total cost curve, and we could take any point here. Let's just take this point just to be off of that minimum point. If currently we were operating here, and we might say, well, our average cost per unit at 100 burgers is $4 a burger, and we can sell these suckers for $4.25. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, right? But the 101st burger actually costs us something higher. We're actually losing money on the extra burger. In other words, we shouldn't be doing that because we were focusing in on the average rather than the marginal. So you're absolutely right. That's where the confusion gets in, and that's what makes this kind of powerful for decision making, is to remember which costs are relevant for the decision at hand. All right, so you guys have these PowerPoints, so you don't have to busy yourself too much with copying down if you want to copy down a few points, but you'll have all of these PowerPoints. They're already, I think, online, and if they're not perfectly up there, I'll be happy to email them all to you too, so that you have them.
What would that be under?
Yeah, where would you put them? Where would it be?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if maybe they're not,
I don't know.
I can't remember offhand. If they're not, I'll dump a whole email to you, so we'll get them out to you. So I just don't want you to be too preoccupied, because we'll move through these kind of fast, so. And you can see some of this is what I already gave you, right, when we went through the first part. So this is a little bit of review of what we did already on marginal cost and marginal revenue too. Okay, so average cost is irrelevant to extent decisions, so these extra decisions. So should you change the level of advertising? Should you increase the quality of service? Is your staff big enough or too big? How many parking spaces should you lease? Every single decision kind of comes down to the same thing of what's the cost, what's the benefit, make the decision accordingly. After evaluating all of the expected impact of additional cost and additional revenue. And so here's my holy grail statement here. If marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, do it. If not, don't. So, a $50,000 increase in the TV ad budget brings in 1,000 new customers. The estimated marginal cost of TV is $50. The cost to get one more customer, 50,000 divided by 1,000 equals 50. How does revenue fit into this decision?
Well, that's the cost to get one more customer, right?
Right.
So, I mean, as long as the revenue is more than that. Right?
Yep. That's right. So we can start to look at the cost. That's one side of it, and we can start to get sometimes hung up on that. But as long as the revenue exceeds that, then we do it. But this is some of the ways that we can go about thinking about the extra marginal cost. All right. Royalty rates. You receive 2 bids to harvest 100 trees on your land. $150 per tree or $15,000 for the right to harvest all the trees. Your tract of land has 80% pines worth 200 and 20% fir worth 100. Knowing that the harvester faces an additional cost of 20 to cut per tree, which offer should you accept? So on a notepad, if you got little notes here, start cranking up. It was on the video? Did you go, this is chapter 4 video, so you looked at them ahead. Ooh, eager beaver, looking ahead. Good for you. Okay. Yes, these PowerPoints are from there. So now you're really going to be tested on your comprehension of those videos.
In the video, they talk about, I mean, if you're cutting down, if you take the first bid, that guy's only going to cut down trees if they're worth less than what he's paying for them. So if he's, for example, $150 a tree, I mean, he's only going to cut down the ones that are beneficial to him. So they talked about, I think in the video, this might be.
So what's the marginal revenue to him? Under contract A. $150, right. So he's got marginal revenue of $150 per tree, right? And so what's his marginal cost? For contract A, any harvester for that matter, whether it's A or B, by the way, but
$100.
how much is the cost? Not 100. $20 is the marginal cost per tree, right? So if somebody paid $15,000 for the right to harvest all of them, that's just the right to harvest them. They still have to harvest them. They're still going to pay for gas, saw blades, labor, etc. That runs $20. So the whole idea of contract A versus contract B is a fixed rate of $15,000 versus $150 per tree. Okay, So that's cool. So marginal cost is 20. So what else? Which one do we want to do? How do we want to do it?
Take the second option and cut down the pines. Trees.
Okay, so if we do the $150 a tree business on our whole tract of land, which one is the person going to do?
He's only going to cut down firs because if it costs him $200 to cut down pines, he's losing money because he's only spending, or he's only signed a contract.
Okay, I think you said that maybe backwards. He's getting,
That's what $200.
okay, $200 worth of the pines are worth more, right?
Yes.
Right.
The right to harvest whichever ones he wants, basically.
Right, right. So if we allow this person to go in and harvest on a per tree basis, what are they going to harvest versus what are they going to do if the 15,000? So what needs to factor in here? I think you guys are on it. Sounds like you, those of you who got the video, got the gist of it. What's the difference between the two contracts?
There's going to be more incentive for him to harvest per tree, because then he can essentially make more money by harvesting more trees.
Okay, so if he does the per tree business, what's he going to make per tree?
130.
So what's the kind of profit per tree if I think of marginal profit for pines? If I harvest a pine under contract A, what do I make? $30, right? So I got, I'm going to make $200 worth of revenue, minus the $150 I had to pay for the tree, minus the $20 worth of cost, gives me $30 per tree. If I do happen to come across a fir, what does my profit formula look like?
Worth $100?
It's worth 100 minus
150.
150 minus 20. Not looking very good, right?
Negative.
So we got minus, what do we got? Minus 70? So you receive 2 bids to harvest 100 trees on your land. One's $150 a tree. One's $15,000 for the right to harvest all the trees. Knowing that the harvester faces $20 cost to cut, which offer should you accept, you being the landowner, in order to maximize profits? What's a better deal for you? The second one. So under the second one, how much money are you going to make? Since I started kind of backwards here. With B, me being the landowner, how much money do I get? 15,000. How much money do I get with A? So we got 100 trees on our land. They're not going to take the fir, we know that, right? So we got just 80 times 30,
Just 2,400.
2,400. So is that 80? So we're going to do 150. How'd you get your 2,400?
I multiplied 30 times the 80.
That's what that guy's going to make. How much are we going to make?
150 off of these.
150 times
80.
80. Right. Now what does that equal? So we're going to make 150 per tree, but they're not going to take, they're not dummies, they're not going to do these, they're only going to do these. So we're only going to sell 80, we're only going to have 80 of the trees harvested.
And that's going to be 12,000.
12,000. Okay, so what's the lesson of all this business here? What are some takeaways from this example?
We already talked about incentives for
Right? And it's incentives at the margin, right, that were kind of important. Because on the face of it, the way they tee you up here is that if I take 100 trees and I look at 100, if I sell all 100 trees at $150 a tree, do you think some people might think that? Right? Oh, well, it's $100 for trees, 15, I want to make 15,000. Well, that turns out to be $150 a tree. I'll just charge $150 a tree, right? Because that's the average per tree. But you've ignored the incentive structure that you put into place because of the mix of the trees. And so that's one of the dangers of looking at the average cost per tree, because that's indeed what the average is, by the way. If we take the 15,000, the second person under contract B, under contract B, they harvested all 100 trees, right? Divide 15,000 divided by 100. What's the average per tree? It was $150 a tree. Total revenue divided by quantity gave me $150 a tree. So on the face of it, a lot of people might be saying, oh, those are the same deal. What's the difference? The difference is the incentive structure, as you pointed out. As you put it in, the way the contract was designed, we're not going to end up with the same result. Under the idea of profit maximization, that harvester is going to pick, just cherry pick all the pines and leave the firs. And that's going to leave you with $12,000 instead of $15,000 when you wanted your land, assuming they wanted their land cleared at the time to maximize their revenue there. Okay, any last comments on that? So sales commissions, 100 units at $10,000 a unit. Maybe we're selling tuition here in Ottawa or something, I don't know. So we got 100 units at $10,000 a unit. Maybe we're talking in used car or something, right? Option 1, 10% commission. Option 2, a 5% commission with a $50,000 salary. So how do these numbers shake out? 10% commission on $1 million worth of sales is how much? 100,000, right? 10% on $1 million. 5% commission would be 50,000 plus a $50,000 base, same deal. So once again, option 1 versus option 2. Which one should we pick? Which would be a better thing for us to offer our salespeople? The 10%? Why? Okay, they'll feel like they're getting more commission. I'd agree with that.
For 10% commission, can you exceed the number of 100 units? With salary, you can still exceed it, but you're still getting changes.
That's right. So there's potentially some, so for the optimistic salesperson who says, well, the average person does 100 units, but I'm going to do 110 because I beat everybody and I'm the best at everything and whatever, right? So there might be more incentives that way for the eager beaver to take advantage of that if they already know that they're good at sales. So yeah, that's true. Okay, what else?
If you're commission only, you're going to have to work hard on every sale that you do to get that sale.
Okay, so yeah, the incentive's a little different.
Yeah, if you're on salary, those sales that you really have to put in the effort for, you're not going to waste your time. You think, I got 50,000 salary, well, I don't need it. Only get 5% on it.
Good. Other comments? So yeah, we'll kind of come back to this a little bit in some later chapters, actually week 8, but this type of thing might attract a certain person. This person might be totally happy with living in a double wide trailer on this salary, and then they're like, anything I make is just easy money anyway. That's all just gravy, right? But it changes the dynamic when it's 100% commission, you're not even going to be able to make the payment on your double wide if you don't settle, right? So the incentive structure is different. And so now there's more to it. That doesn't necessarily make the 10% option the best one, but at this stage, we just want to say, hey, there's a difference here on the incentives, even though the cost to the company on average might end up being the same on the face of it. That's how it maps out. The incentive structure for our salespeople and their productivity might be different depending on the structure of the pay. All right, anything else on that one? What are our incentives at the margin? Okay, let's skip that one. So flat salary, $75,000. After learning about the benefits of the incentive pay in class, the CEO changed the COO's, Chief Operating Officer, compensation to $50,000 plus a third of profits. Profits increased 74%. Compensation for that CEO, COO went up from $75,000 to $177,000. Was that the right move?
COO thinks so.
Yeah, CEO's pretty happy with that. He's driving a nice car now. Yeah, $100,000 little bump in pay here is not all bad. So that seemed like a good idea.
Profits increased too, though. They went up 74%.
Absolutely, they did. You're right.
Well, what happens if they drop again?
Right? Could swing. What else? What about those profits? Is that all attributable to the CEO? Is it all that person did? Are they were they the keystone to the whole operation?
They had to have been, you want to give them 30 profit.
Say that again?
They had to have been if you want to give them 30 profit.
Well, I might disagree with you there. I mean, I don't know if they necessarily had to have been. I mean, the way we teed up the problem here is that flat salary is 75, after learning all the benefits, took an MBA class and said, hey, we can get people incentivized and we got to give a profit sharing thing and let's do a third of profits. I mean, does that person deserve all of that? Because, as David pointed out, they increased to 1.2. Was all of that increase due to that single person?
No, I'm sure he.
In this ratio or whatever, you know that. So is it the right? How could we change that to tell a maybe a better story that seems a little more fair? Possibly. I hate to even throw out the word fair. We don't have. By the way, this is kind of a case study thing. We don't have enough information to tell the real thing. I want to see what you guys are thinking about this.
If he accounted for a third of the increase, then he probably should only get a fourth of the profit. Because that's not a whole, that's about 75% of it.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's right. So, you know, is that easy to measure? Whether he did a third of the increase?
Yeah.
You know, is that something that's pretty easy to measure? If, well, hey, we increased 74% up to 1.2 million. John, I know you did 26.7% of that on your own. I mean, every deal that was brought to the table, you did exactly that percentage. Sally, you did 16.66%, and Lou, you're in the back room doing accounting, but I know you contributed a little bit, so you probably got like 3% of that pie. In other words, is it easy to dissect everybody's contribution to the bottom line? And in fact, are there factors outside of the firm that could have contributed to the 74% increase? Like what? What are some things outside of the company's control that could have led to the great increase in revenue that they experienced, or profits, I guess we
If
say.
a celebrity used your product and made itself promoted.
Okay, good. That could be something. Although, if we hired the celebrity to do it, then we kind of control part of that.
I'm saying they did.
Maybe it's a seasonal thing.
Seasonal thing, good. What else? Seasonal's good. External things, external factors. What other external factors affect companies' profits that they had maybe not much at all to do with? Competition, good. Some companies went out of business and all of a sudden they got all their people. Good. External factors to operating a business. I like competition.
Economy itself, I mean,
The economy itself in general, there's just external things are going well, and rising tide raises all boats, or whatever that expression is, right? Lifts all boats. So general economy, good. Other things? External to the managers of the company, the owners of the company, stuff that just happened that, hey, crap, you kind of lucked out. What's that? Natural disaster. I run a water business, and a natural disaster just wiped out half of the East Coast, and all of a sudden water sales are up. Right? Good. You're missing one other big one here.
war.
War. That would probably work. What else?
Would outsourcing play a factor?
Not if we're choosing, because outsourcing is usually a choice by us to say that we want to give that. Give you a hint, Obama. Government, right. So the government changes laws. All of a sudden the government allows subsidies for whatever business you're doing or whatever. Somehow there's a break that had nothing to do with your efforts that allowed profits to soar. So there's lots of these external factors. And so you have to be careful when you pick 1/3, if that's the appropriate number. One of the ways, how could you combat that? Possibly 1/3 seemed to be the number when we thought, if revenues go up by 10%, then I want to give old John here a bump in the shorts of 1/3 of that. That's cool. If they went up by 10%, how could we combat this issue if profits ended up going up to 74% because the government cut some subsidies or a natural disaster or some other external thing? How could we structure the pay to, compensate for that? So right now, the way it is that here's his equation: profits minus 150,000. John gets 1/3 of that. That's his pay. Tell me another compensation scheme that would come up with something less than 177, but would still take into account the 1/3. If profits jump by 10%, then yeah, we're going to give John 1/3. That seems fair.
Just pay the salary.
So that it maxes out. Is that what you mean? The salary? You said just pay a salary. I still want to keep a compensation scheme,
Okay.
but I don't want it to end up with this solution. I want this solution to be John makes 100,000. Tell me how I could get there while still preserving the possibility that if profits increase by 10%, I'll give him 1/3. Or some other thing. I don't mean to be feeding you too much confusion. How could we get that so he gets a little bit more? So he gets 33%. I like that, but I don't like that solution. How could we structure his pay based on profit still, so that we didn't get to something, let's just call this absurd. We didn't really mean to pay John 100 grand more than double his pay, because we know that there was external factors and other things going on.
If you reduce costs.
Okay, so we could tie it to something different, but let's just stick it on profit. Since this is on profit, we've got the profit and cost, the cost and revenue kind of factored into profit.
Are we taking
Possibly they could start to pool in it differently.
Do we split the 74% evenly?
Okay, so I want to split the 74%, but I don't want to do it evenly. I want to do it unevenly if I'm even tracking with you right. So how could I get a lesser number here while still preserving, if there's a 10% increase, he gets a third. Yes?
I don't know if I'm on the right track. Well, could you put a ceiling?
Yeah, you could. Yep, you could put a ceiling on it and just cap it out. Now, what's wrong with the ceiling? So let's just say, so now with a ceiling, by the way, it would look like this. It would look like 33% of profit minus the 150. I'm just writing exactly what's up there, with a max of 25,000. That's it. That's how the equation would look. It's like, hey, you hit 25, you're done. So let's say this has been a good year, January through December, and things have hopped up, and we frickin' hit the profit ceiling in March. John's pretty happy. He hit his $25,000 max. He's pretty happy.
He's not gonna care about the rest of the year.
Yeah, he doesn't give a rip about the rest of the year. So we got kind of a problem with the potential ceiling. So how can we overcome that?
10% of the 75, or 74%.
Okay, 10%. So you're trying to decrease this.
Yeah.
I want to do that, but in a different way, because I still want to give them 33% if it was only a 10% increase.
Oh,
See what I mean? Like, I don't want to distort the incentives too much, so I like the 33% if 10%, but then I don't want it to get all crazy, because that says 10% on everything, or 33% on everything. I want 33% if 10%, but then I also don't want to put a ceiling on it, and then he doesn't work for the rest of the year. What could I do to dampen this? Without the ceiling effectively making, here, let me put it to you this way. The ceiling does this, right? 33%, it's 0% after the 25,000. So what can we do between 33 and 0? Could we lower it? Sure. Nothing wrong with that. So in other words, if I say 20% on the next 10% and 10% on the next 10% and 7% on the next 10%. In other words, I can make it so that John always has incentive to keep helping the company, but I'm descending at the margin. I'm trying to tie this back to the marginal cost. That incrementally I'm decreasing that percentage amount. And so in the event that Obama does some policy that helps out my business, John's still going to get rewarded, but he's not going to get crazy rewarded. He's just going to get 7% if it ends up happening there. And because, of course, it's always a mix of, well, was it Obama or was it the fact that John made this key decision in November about the pricing of the product, blah, 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 blah. So this is kind of a thinking at the margin again of what people's incentives are as we go through. Putting this blanket 33% might not be appropriate. Okay, questions or comments there? Okay, so we did that. That is chapter 4. Okay, so we're going to kind of continue on our decision making here with some real estate. And bring in percentages and loan amounts.